Chromosomes and cell division. Welcome to biology.
Wait, this is biology?
Asexual and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is the process by which a single parent reproduces itself. An example is a hydra, and a hydra is a plant which will just spud off of itself like a SpongeBob SquarePants and then make lots more of it. So my pin is white. My bad.
Isn't a hydra one of the mythological creatures that you can cut its head off and it grows back?
Yeah, but it's really just a plant. But if you cut its head off, it'll grow back. Yeah.
That was kind of cool.
If you press next, the next thing will pop up. Oh, good. Sexual reproduction is where two cells from different parents unite to produce the first cell of a new organism. So examples of that would be like maple trees for you tree lovers, birds, and humans. Like your mother and father made a new cell.
Her birds?
That is you.
I thought the stork brought me.
Cool, what was it?
Well, they could have.
Alright, more about types of sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. So these are just a little more scientific-y telling you why. Sexual, the fusion of two gametes, and we're going to talk about what gametes are. They're eggs and sperm. That result in offspring, so children, that are a genetic mix of the parents. So you have the possibility of being 50% your mom, 50% your dad. Even though some of you out there look exactly like your mother or exactly like your father. Asexual reproduction is the offspring comes from one parent and are genetically identical from that parent in most parts.
For the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. So that is like your father would be a clone of yourself. And you'd be like, what's up, Dad? And you'd be like, oh, it's a mirror because I thought it was my father.
There's actually lots of really cool plants that do this, that reproduce asexually, so that one of the advantages of asexual reproduction is that it's very quick. So when conditions are good, and an individual or an organism that reproduces asexually can basically swamp the area and take all the resources, because it's a lot quicker than something that is reproducing sexually. The other thing that's an advantage for asexual is that all of the individuals can reproduce, whereas in sexual reproduction, the males contribute genetic information or contribute DNA, but only the females are producing the offspring. Okay, whereas in asexual, all the individuals can reproduce. There's no such thing as male-female. Well, some organisms can do both. It's really cool.
Also, an advantage of asexual reproduction is there's less time and energy because they don't need to mate. And you guys being freshmen, I'm sure you understand that it takes a lot of time and energy to go find boyfriends and girlfriends out there.
But a disadvantage would be if the environment changes. With asexual reproduction, they're unable to change. Therefore, if the environment changes, they're going to probably die out because there would be no variety within their species.
Yep, and this is a really big problem right now out west because there's lots of aspen groves, or aspen's a really pretty kind of tree, that clone themselves, and there's a parasite that is attacking them, and since they're all genetically the same, these huge swaths, or these huge acres, tons of acres of trees are dying.
Another example, if anyone has ever had a type of moss that takes over a pond that you see it all over the top of it, it's easily killed with adding a chemical to the water because the moss is no longer able to adapt to its environment, so it just kills it off.
And if you're wondering, that picture on the slide, those are sea anemones. Yeah, that reproduce asexually. So, and one of the problems, as I'm sure you've heard, or maybe not, you haven't heard, but the coral reefs are in a lot of trouble because there's lots of organisms that reproduce asexually, and as things like the temperature and the salinity, that's the salt concentration in the ocean, are changing, they can't cope with it, and since they're all pretty much clones of each other, because that's what asexual, that's what you get, you're getting something that's pretty much exactly the same, unless there's some kind of random mutation. they're dying.
Don't touch the butt. Sorry.
Sexual reproduction advantages. If the environment changes, there's a possibility of you surviving if you're different, but if you die, maybe someone of your species survives because you could be genetically different from them.
I love this example up here of deer. There's actually a couple of herds of deer in Arizona that have been hunted so heavily for the big male deers, the bucks that have huge antlers on their head. They've been selected against, or they've been hunted and killed so much that now they're finding male deer that don't have antlers because they're not getting killed by the hunters.
And that's also why a lot of you hunters will know this. In several counties in Missouri, they have limits on how big the racks, how many points they have to be before you can kill them.
Yep. Some sexual reproduction disadvantages is it takes a lot of time and energy to find a mate. So looking at the example of our lovely male deer right here, those antlers are very expensive in terms of his survival and in terms of actually building them.
And maintenance on them once they have them.
Because he can't get shirts over his head.
Yeah, I'm sure some of you that are hunters have...
Yeah.
I'm sure some of you that are hunters have probably seen deer that have been running and their antlers get caught in branches, and that's not a good thing when you're trying to get away from something that's trying to kill you.
Or seen the trees where they've scraped trying to get the velvet off their antlers. That takes a lot of time and energy to get that velvet off.
Yep.
And then I'm thinking now, how does Mrs. Hood know so much about hunting? Sorry.
Because she hunts. Only females can bear offspring, which we talked about already. So, anything else?
Bear offsprings?
Pretty much
all mammals' offspring.
Pretty much all of what it comes down to is that sexual reproduction is very advantageous because it can adapt to the environment, and since the environment is always changing, that's really important if you want to survive.
And because it has lots of variety within sexual reproduction, whereas asexual reproduction does not have much genetic variety.
Alright, so I figured you guys needed to know the types of cells we'll be talking about because they're kind of interlaid throughout the rest of the notes. So there's two types of cells in your body. There are somatic cells, which are your body cells. Like anywhere in your body, if there's a cell, it's going to be a somatic cell, okay? These are diploid, which means they have all the chromosomes in your genetics inside of those somatic cells, alright? And they divide by mitosis, which we will talk about this set of notes later. Gametes...
Hold on just a second. Oh, it's not going to circle.
It's white. I don't know why.
But if you look, that's diploid di, which means two, and that's where it comes from. The two from di.
Yes.
Alright. And gametes are the sex cells where you get your eggs and your sperm cells, alright? And those are haploids where you only have half of your chromosomes in each cell. We won't talk about those till later when we talk about meiosis.
Here, do you want to circle?
I had no idea where that was.
Yeah,
Thank you for finding
there's... Okay. Di and...
diploid.
Hap or half. It's very close to.
Yep.
It's one.
Really important, I know, at least for me, it was helpful to know that pretty much everything in your body is going through mitosis except for the gametes, which would be the eggs and the sperm cells. Those are created by meiosis.
Okay, cell cycle. The cell cycle is a series of events that cells can go through as they grow and divide. The cell cycle is similar for all cells with a few differences due to the cell's function or size. Compared to smaller cells, larger cells have trouble moving needed materials in and waste products out. So the smaller cells are going to have a lot more problems getting waste out or taking materials, or I'm sorry, I said that backwards. The smaller cells are going to have an easier time where the larger cells are going to have problems getting that waste out and materials in.
So this slide, I was thinking it's important to show you guys that a cell has a cycle just like humans have a life cycle, okay? Also, it's important for the test to know things on this slide. Okay, you can go to the next one now.
One thing, I totally lost my train of thought.
Just hit next. Don't worry about it.
Here you go. Star.
Yeah, important. Importante.
Jeez.
Don't hit me.
All right, in a picture of the cell cycle, it starts with our G1, which stands
all they need
for...
is interphase, really.
Well, yeah, but starts with gap 1. Then we go into interphase, which is here.
Interphase.
And it's abbreviated with an S. You want to...
Synthesis,
Yeah, the
right?
S is for the synthesis. That's
Which is
where
the
DNA is
okay.
being
Okay.
replicated.
Then we have G2, which is gap 2. And then we go into the meiotic phase, which is where mitosis and cytokinesis happen.
Huh?
Regular processing.
What?
Gaps. Right?
What are you talking about?
Gaps are...
Okay, so you just really need to understand that interphase is where DNA is being replicated, right? You
DNA
don't really-
replicating and the cells living its life.
Yeah, that's where it spends the majority of its life in. The meiotic phase is very little. It's a very short time.
And to know that the meiotic phase consists of mitosis, which is cells dividing, and cytokinesis, which is the cytoplasm dividing.
You can think of this whole life cycle as kind of 3 steps. Interphase is a huge piece of the pie. That's why it's a circle. All right? And then there's mitosis, and then cytokinesis right at the end before it breaks into 2 new cells.
The mitotic phase, I guess, where mitosis is occurring, that's dividing the nucleus. Cytokinesis is the rest of the cell. That's dividing. So, I don't know if, do they need to go that much in?
It's
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, so interphase, this is most of the cell's life. Some cells are permanently stuck in interphase, like your nerve cells or your muscle cells, which is why if you damage a nerve or a certain muscle cells, when it's in interphase here, then it can't go through and it can't basically create a new one through mitosis to replace it, which is why that's serious, that damages. Alright, the cell functions continue as the cell prepares to divide. That's all during interphase. Okay, we talk a little bit about chromosomes.
A little bit.
A lot
so,
about.
Yeah, so chromosomes are going to be made to allow mitosis to happen, all right? Because otherwise, all your DNA would be all jumbled all over the place in the nucleus, and there'd be no clean way to actually make sure genetic replicas go to each new cell. Okay, so in a cell, DNA is usually found as chromatin, which is a loose, unpacked DNA. But before a cell can divide, the DNA is copied and packaged through winding around proteins called histones and supercoiling. This process makes them visible, and they are then referred to as chromosomes. There's a lot of pictures later that show it pretty well.
But I like to draw.
I like doing the squiggly.
Okay.
I like to think of it as Christmas lights. If
You should go to your next picture, isn't it? The Christmas lights? Oh, there's one more slide, and then it's your Christmas
okay,
lights.
well then I won't.
I liked it a lot, so that's why I kept it on there.
Well, because I hate untangling Christmas lights. It was always my job
I
at
thought that
Christmas.
was a bush with trash in it. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
Chromosomes. DNA replicates at the end of interphase, right before mitosis. So there's no replication of DNA in mitosis. It's already been duplicated or replicated. Okay, remains connected at the centromere. The centromere is just kind of the center of this X part right here. You can see it in the picture over there. It's a
kind of where the X meets. Yeah, so chromosome.
I was always told that the centromere was like a knot. It was the knot in the center holding it all together.
Yep.
That's pretty good. This chromatin, we already pretty much talked about in the last slide.
The X will just be important because it'll be good to see that later when we talk about all the phases of mitosis.
Yeah, and a lot of times we talk about the X as sister, as a chromosome that's composed out of sister chromatids, which I'm not sure if...
We might want to stop it and start a new one.
Christmas lights next time. Bye!